The next speaker, the keynote speaker, is Sarah Morehead. Recovering from religion, PAStAHCon, Reason Rally, Hotline Project, friend. Come on up, Sarah. See, do you hear the hoots? That's the hoots.
Do I have a clicker?
Up there.
Obviously, I'm short. Okay, can everybody hear me? Fantastic. So I am completely embarrassed because I grew up a fundamentalist, so that sort of stuff, the whole praise thing is so weird to me. Totally weird. All right, see if we can learn the clicker. Yay! Okay. Sorry guys, I literally got a power nap. I was on a plane since about 4 o'clock this morning, and then I got here, and then I got a quick power nap and made myself presentable, and there we go. So what you see is what you get. Thanks for being patient and understanding. Thank you, David. I heard you. That's Fitzgerald. Anyways, so I'm Sarah Morehead. I'm the executive director for Recovering from Religion. And cord fixed? We good? All right. So I do a lot of things, obviously. First of all, just before we get started on this stuff, I do want to make sure everybody is aware. Who all here heard of the Reason Rally in 2012? Raise your hand. So many of you. How many here went? If you were at the Reason Rally, that's a good number. Cool. Okay, so like he was saying, we are having the Reason Rally again, and I'm part of putting that together. Whether that means I drew the short straw or not, we're yet to figure out. But it's a lot of fun. It's a coalition of organizations actually that are putting it together. So there's about 14 organizations that are a part of it. It's a lot of the national organizations, the American Atheists, American Humanists, Center for Inquiry, that kind of thing. You can go to our website at reasonrally.org to get more information. But the most important thing is to block out June 4th, 2016 on your calendar. We already have the hotels up on the website. You can get your rate. We've got a lot of stuff that's going to happen, and it's going to be a 4-day event this time. We're going to have stuff going from Thursday through Sunday. The main event is going to be on the Lincoln on Saturday, June 4th. I see some of you actually getting your phones out now because I just said that. Yes, that's exciting. So I'll be glad to talk to you about that later. I want to get into this, but I want to make sure and get a plug out for it. So I hope to see you all there at the Reason Rally. So for Recovering from Religion, I got involved with Recovering from Religion about 5 years ago. And it's one of those organizations where, thank you, awesome. It's one of those organizations where there really wasn't anything else like it out there. As someone who grew up evangelical, Southern Baptist, all of that, as I was deconverting, one of the things that struck me was that I really felt like I was the only person, and I didn't have a lot of resources that I could find, despite the internet being what it was, to locate other people who were where I was at. I could find all the atheists, but they scared me, quite frankly. And I could find the questioning believers, but they were still really clinging to the Bible, and that was beyond my understanding as well. But I was looking for a place where I could just find other people like me, where we were kind of saying, this doesn't really fit for me, but I don't know what does, and just kind of scope out the landscape. So I found Recovering from Religion, and I got involved at that point. And I want to read you guys a little story here, and then I'm going to talk to you about the programs that we have, how a couple of the programs come together, and then what you guys can do to help. Every morning, a young man walked the beach where he saw a woman pick starfish from the sand and toss them into the water. One day, he asked her why. She explained the starfish will die if left to bake in the hot sun. The man shook his head, but there are thousands of them every day. You can't possibly save them all. You won't even make a difference. The woman looked down at the starfish in her hand and tossed it to safety. She smiled at him and said, "It makes a difference to this one." That, in and of itself, is the premise behind Recovering from Religion. We are not evangelical atheists. We're not going out to deconvert everyone. That's not our goal. That's not the point. But there are people out there who need our help, and those are the people that we're here to be a part of their lives. So, what is Recovering from Religion about? At its core, Recovering from Religion sees religion as, at best, an unnecessary force in society. Now, obviously, there are much worse aspects that can be found in different segments of religion. And for some people, religion works just fine. And for them, great. They're not going to show up at our doors, and that's fine. But for a lot of people who are realizing that maybe the confines of their religious belief system doesn't work, they're learning to explore ideas beyond the boundaries of their faith. They're learning about boundaries, they're learning about self-respect, they're learning about other religions or other belief systems or other values that have never occurred to them before. And what we do is help connect them with resources where they can explore that in more depth. One of the things that we help people understand is that there's not just a binary of believer or non-believer. There's all kinds of concepts beyond that. Agnostic atheist, agnostic theist. Everybody kind of fits somewhere in those areas, but they don't always mean the things we think they mean. So when people come to us, one of the first things we do is help them understand the language that they're using. How many people here came from some kind of a religious background? I'm in good company. So the thing with that is, many times religion, in whatever denomination it may be, will do what's called loading the language. They give specific words, specific meanings that mean things that as we hear them, but they don't actually mean that outside of that context. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, the word secular was equated to satanic, period. It was non-negotiable. We didn't hear that, I promise. Oh, it's Brian, yes! The other one, humanist. Humanist meant hell. It was very clear cut. So when I would hear that language, maybe outside at my school, if we were learning about the Humanist Manifesto in the 80s, those kinds of things, that was all really trigger language that immediately told me what worldview that particular person held. If they were talking about supporting a humanist concept, I immediately knew they were not one of us. So part of this is helping people understand those words don't necessarily actually mean that. And that's an interesting concept to wrap their head around. We have a couple really high priorities. One is to help people understand and value relationships before religion. We are not asking people to put their religion away. We're not asking people to let go of their religion if that's not something they're coming to us to be a part of doing. But we are asking them to prioritize their relationships beyond the boundaries of their religion. The other one is conscience before creeds. That one's really, really important. What starts to happen as you're reconsidering the role of religion in your life is you start to weigh out your conscience and your creeds. At first, you tend to think they're the same thing. But when a lot of us went through a deconversion process, one of the things many of us do is kind of dig down deeper into the Bible, into Scripture. We start actually reading it, all of it. It's very helpful. But it's also very contradictory. And it says things that if we really truly adhere to, actually violate our conscience, and it creates a disconnect. And we start to have to make choices. Am I going to follow what this book says, my creedal belief system, or am I going to let my conscience outweigh that? It could be something as simple as where the Bible says, in this situation, you pelt them with stones until they die. And you go, maybe not. At that point, you've chosen your conscience over your creeds. Oddly enough, that's it. But all the way to the part where Jesus says that he comes to bring a sword and cleave families away from one another, at that point, sometimes we start to go, maybe that's too much to ask. Maybe that's not quite what we wanted to do. And we're encouraging people to pick their conscience before their creeds. An important value that we hold. Your worth is not defined by what people say or how others choose to treat you. A lot of times as we're going through a deconversion process, because of the people and the communities that we've grown up in and been a part of, they are in a tough situation. They are having to choose their creed or their conscience, and they may not be at a point in their lives yet where they can completely wrap their heads around choosing that relationship before their religion, and that's tough. So a lot of the people coming to us are dealing with situations where their family, their friends, their coworkers, maybe their spouses, maybe their children are saying, I can't be a part of your life because you no longer fit inside my religion. That's incredibly challenging. How many people here have in some way been ostracized because they have deconverted on any level, started to let go of religion in their lives? A lot of people. So we have a lot of programs that we've put together, and I know you guys have heard Teresa talk about that a little bit, so I'm going to go in depth in a couple more areas. One of the things we have is called the Secular Therapist Project. The Secular Therapist Project matches clientele who with secular therapists, meaning these are therapists who agree to use non-religious, secular-focused therapy in their sessions. Now, most people across the country call that actual therapy, but in some parts of the world and here in the United States, really, it's a kind of considered a badge of honor for a lot of people to say, you know what, I'm a Christian therapist or I'm a biblical therapist. And what happens is they're approaching their entire therapeutic intervention through the lens of a biblical worldview, which, by the way, blatantly violates their ethical code. But because they believe God's laws are superior to man's laws, they don't care. And it's something that when people are looking for appropriate, adequate mental health care, that can be an issue. So we help people find therapists who go, you know, that's actually not what we're going to do. And these therapists don't care what religion anyone is. They're not, again, out to deconvert. They're just offering adequate, appropriate mental health care. So the Secular Therapist Project is one of our programs that we're very, very proud of. We have helped over 3,000 clients, and we have over 250 therapists. If you or someone you know is a therapist, we need more therapists, please go to our website and register to be a part of it. It's free. Another program that we have is local groups that meet monthly all over the country. We've actually got them expanded all over the world as well. They're once-a-month groups for about 2 hours a month, and it's just a peer support network. A safe place to go and talk to other people who have also been somehow negatively affected by religion or faith. Another program that we have is the Hotline Project. And that project came about because since my entire involvement with recovering from religion over the past 5 years, we have been inundated with people reaching out to us. They call our office line, they email us, they'll pull us aside at conferences. And quite honestly, they just want somebody to talk to. They need to tell their story. They feel like they're the only person who's going through this and they don't know what to do. A lot of times they'll even say, I don't need you to reply back. I just have to tell somebody. And it will be pages and pages and pages of heart-wrenching stories about what they've gone through, struggling, begging God to believe, begging God to take this doubt away, desperately hoping that they don't have to lose what they see is right in front of them. But they know they can't hold on to it anymore. It just won't stick. So who do they talk to? They come to us. So the Hotline Project came about so that there would be an actual phone number and people on the other end of the line to be able to talk to. The cool thing about the Hotline Project, we don't have a time limit on the calls. Our agents are trained to handle these calls in a way that maintains control of the call, but gives the caller the opportunity to just get everything out of their system. Our longest call to date was 2.5 hours long. And it made a world of difference to this person because they just needed somebody to talk to. So how do we do the Hotline Project? It is a monumental undertaking. We have a ton of agents, but what we do is we have a volunteer process, or we have a volunteer application process, and our volunteers are interviewed. After the interview, presuming they fit the criteria that we have on our end to be a part of our phone program, they go through training. Training takes 8 to 10 to 12 hours, just kind of depending on how well it goes. We match everybody up with a mentor. They're not thrown to the wolves. We don't send them out and have everybody call and yell at them or anything. Oh, well, that's later in the training, but it's a painless process, and we developed our own training program, and we had it vetted by psychologists to make sure that we were following industry standard peer support guidelines. This is not a crisis network. This is specifically a peer support hotline. So people just understand I can pick up the phone and I can call and I can just have an easy conversation. We teach our agents how to understand the hierarchy of needs. Why is this important? Remember I said it's on a crisis support line? Well, what that means is if someone calls in and they're in crisis, we teach our agents how to prioritize that way down at the bottom. If there's a safety or if there's a physiological issue that they need help with immediately, we refer them to a competent crisis hotline. If someone calls us who is suicidal, we transfer them to a suicidal hotline. Because you know what, at that point, their spiritual needs, their self-esteem issues, their family issues, all of those things, we just really want them to stay alive at that point. So we're gonna make sure they get the help they need. It's very important to us that we're not duplicating the wheel. So anyone calling domestic violence issues, sexual assault, any issues that are considered crisis, we immediately refer those out. And of course, encourage them to call us back. Don't get me wrong, but we just wanna make sure they've got the resources they need. We train our agents on how to set and keep appropriate boundaries. This is important for a couple reasons. One, most of us come from some sort of a faith background, and inherently faith pretty much teaches you how to not have boundaries. If you've grown up your entire life with a belief that God is inside your head and sees the most innermost thoughts that you have, the most private and personal moments that you've never shared with anyone else, then it's kind of hard to understand how to set and keep effective and clear boundaries on that level. We teach our agents how to focus on the caller, how to not insert our personal bias. I have agents on my hotline that you guys would recognize as, people who are visible in the movement, who are very anti-theist, 100%. If you saw their Facebook pages, you would go, that is not someone for recovering from religion. However, on my hotlines, they're awesome because we teach them how to do that, how to take their own bias out and how to meet the needs of the caller. That's incredibly important. It's about respecting people where they're at and not pushing our own agenda. How to screen out and risk for crisis situations, we talked about that a little bit. The other thing that we teach them how to do is how to create an action plan. Again, religion from day one tells you what to think, what book to read, what answers to have. It doesn't teach you critical thought and how to explore for yourself, how to make those mistakes and how to recover from that. So we empower people who are calling us to make their own action plan and take control of whatever situation led them to call us in the first place. That could be as simple as just saying, you know what, I'm going to call you back next week. Great. We appreciate that. It could be as simple as, I'm going to read this article that you emailed me, and then I'm going to go talk to my sister about it because it's kind of in line of what we've been talking about lately that's stressing me out. That's an action plan. It could be as complicated as, I'm going to start making some phone calls to some shelters because I know once I have this conversation with my parents, they're going to kick me out. We teach them how to take control of the situation in front of them. And then again, at the very end, it's peer support, not therapy. If people, and when they're calling in, if they start hitting some mental health criteria risk that we see in the language or in their presentation, again, our agents are trained to say, you know what, we want to make sure that you have access to a therapist, and we connect them to the Secular Therapist Project. If you look on the Secular Therapist Project, by the way, and there isn't one in your area, we do have some therapists who do distance therapy on Skype, and that's been a fantastic resource for a lot of people. What about the trolls? That's the big question we always get. So we have a 5% troll rate. It's a harassment rate. That's very, very low for a call center. And there's a cool reason for that. In the training, one of the things we teach our agents how to do, I said it a little bit ago, is how to take control of the call. And here's what we found. Many times when people call us, and they're calling and they're angry and they're yelling and you're deconverting and you're sending people to hell and all those wonderful things they say. What are they expecting? They're expecting us to be defensive, reactionary, argue. We don't debate. By the way, we send them to Matt for that. But what we do is say, gosh, it sounds like this is really upsetting you. I'm sorry. How can I help you understand this better? That throws them. They don't know what to do with that. We teach our agents how to have the conversation in a way that it's respectful, and we take control of the call. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still some jerks, I promise. And with that, our agents are empowered to disconnect the call in the event they're being treated abusively because we don't have time for that and we take care of our volunteers first. So that's priority. But we absolutely teach everyone how to handle these calls where they're calling because these questions, they might have read about us or they saw us on CNN or whatever it was, it's triggering something in their mind that stressed them out. Maybe they have doubts. Maybe they know someone who's questioning. And if we can be that first friendly voice that they talk to, we're not expecting them to deconvert. Most of these folks, not in a million years, but I am expecting that they get off the phone going, that wasn't really what I expected. And that's great because it gets those gears moving. One of the most common questions that we get from people who are reaching out for help, they'll say, I haven't believed in this God stuff for a really, really long time, but I'm still really afraid of hell. It's an interesting concept. When you don't believe in a supernatural being, but you're still afraid of its punishment, that's how deep the indoctrination goes. At its core, that's what recovering from religion is about. It's about what happens after the intellectual side is kicked in, but the emotional stuff is still there. There's a lot of really awesome books out there, philosophers, thinkers, scientists. The intellectual stuff is handled. But that doesn't change the emotional component. When people are risking their entire identity or their family or their community to be able to say, you know what, no matter how hard I try, this just isn't something that's going to work for me. That's what we're about. So I want to read you guys a few transcripts from our calls. It's important to me because I want you all to hear from them why they've called us. We, at some point, are going to have the actual audio. I promise it's more compelling, but all of our calls are anonymous, and it's really important to us to protect privacy. So it's not something that we've figured out just yet from a legal perspective, but once we do, we will have some audio. I've been so careful about hiding secular stuff from my dad, but he saw my Dawkins book today. He preached at me for hours, and I've had panic attacks ever since. While he was talking, I kept tracing words like logic, love, and RR on my arm. I didn't feel so alone, and it distracted me a little. Anonymous caller. We always ask demographic questions at the end of the call, and it's completely voluntary. But one of the cool things about that is we're going to be able to start tracking the data. People call in and they say, well, I've called a couple times before, or they fit a profile that's been made for them. We can match that up. They stay anonymous. That's not a problem at all. But we're going to be able to, over 2, 3, 5 years' time, be able to say, you know, people call in X many times, and this is where they're at on the spectrum of disbelief every time they've called. And this is how long it's taken them to get from point A to point B. That's going to be really awesome. So this one was anonymous. They declined to provide that information, and of course, that's always okay. I've been an atheist for 6 months. My wife is upset. Our priest bugs her about why I'm not in church. He says if I don't believe anything, I can't be a good dad to our son. You can hear him kind of choking up. I'm getting scared. She's starting to believe him. That one really got to me. I'm a mom. I have a lot of kids, for those of you who don't know me. But this person at a church who has never themselves been married or had children is saying small little things that is causing his wife to completely rethink their entire life together. That's how much of an impact this has. Everyone at church looks down on me. I feel so alone. I'm still the same person. I just don't think what they're doing is right anymore. I'm still me. Why can't they see that? Former Baptist. Notice former Baptist, but still in church. We get a lot of those. I don't know what to do. I think my husband knows I'm questioning all of this. He'll make me leave if he finds out. I can't lose my kids, but I don't know how long I can keep this up. She identified as Mormon, not former, not a non-believer. She identifies as a Mormon. She's questioning. She doesn't know where she's at. She doesn't really care. She just knows that if she goes to her husband with these issues, she's out. And she's terrified. I'm 16. Is it okay to talk to you? Our agent, of course, said it was. We get calls from all ages. We will talk to anyone who calls us, without question. I'm so scared of going to hell. I have nightmares that I'm on fire. My dad says that's God warning me. I don't think it's God, though. Is that bad? I don't believe in his God anymore. Isn't that an interesting way to word that? I don't believe in his God anymore. Like when I was a kid, I loved my Legos. I didn't even make them, but I loved them, so I took care of them, you know. That hell stuff, that's pretty bad. 16 years old. He just wants to talk to his dad. Now, I promise you that his dad, if you were to talk to him, loves this kid with all his heart. He is not in any way in his mind rejecting his child. A lot of times in very fundamentalist mindset, inerrant word, any of that, they embrace what is kind of like a tough love concept. You know, I'm gonna love you in a tough way so that you understand that if you don't do it this way, you're apart from God. So I'm gonna push you apart from me. It's a very convoluted, dysfunctional thing, but that's what this is about. The dad's trying to scare the kid straight in his mind. But all he's doing is pushing him away. And so he reached out to us. This one, the call answered and the caller was already crying. My parents said they won't let anyone in our house who doesn't accept Christ, even if it's their own kids. They don't know. And she starts sobbing. I want to tell them, I have to tell them, they'll still love me, won't they? I'm so scared, I don't know what to do. And you can hear from the voice, this is not a college kid. The agent says, I'm here to help. How old are you? 12. 12 years old. The story behind it, the more she talked, her parents had seen a CBS documentary about atheists, and they had made it the topic of their next home Bible discussion, and they had an in-home family Bible, or an in-home Bible study with their group, and she had overheard this, and they were talking about, there's a Bible verse about allowing an unbeliever to cross your threshold, and that was what they were focusing on. And she was listening to all of this and realizing in their language that they were absolutely adamant that they would never allow an unbeliever into their house. And she panicked and she didn't know what to do. A lot of people have asked, what do we do in these situations? We do get a lot of minors who contact us. And one of the things, again, remember that hierarchy of needs? We remind them of a couple of things. One, their parents are legally obligated to support them, whether they like it or not. Number two, we make sure they have contacts to Child Protective Services. We make sure they understand abuse laws in their state. And we make sure and help them understand they will probably still be atheists in a few years. It's okay to just hold on. If you are still dependent on your parents for financial support and safety, it's okay if you don't come out right now. I know all of us want to say, everybody come out and be proud and all those things, but whether you're a minor child living in someone else's home, or whether you're just a parent or a spouse, and you know that coming out is going to destroy everything you've got, sometimes it's just too much risk. And we understand that. And that's where all of our support networks come in. When we get people reaching out to us and there's not a local group in their area, or they're not out enough to even be able to risk attending one, we have online support groups that we connect people to. We have a blog called Excommunications, where people can read stories and writings. Some of them are closeted, some of them are not. But it's all about staying connected and processing through this very difficult experience of leaving behind religion. We are not sinners, we are not abominations. We are not born broken, and we do not need salvation. We have embraced our right to think beyond the boundaries of religion. We are living and loving our lives free from faith. Folks, that is what recovering from religion is about. We need your help. We need your help to save anyone who calls us. And we know we can't help everybody, but we need you to help us so that we can keep helping them. So I'm asking you to do one of two things. Visit our website, that's the first. And then after that, make a choice. Either offer us some financial support. We're in the middle of a fundraiser. We'd like to raise $25,000 to be able to fund programs like the Hotline Project, our local groups, and all of the other programs we have in development that are going to be reaching all of these people. And the other thing, if you're able to, if you have any time at all, fill out the volunteer form. We need people to help. Matt was talking about bring a chair. Guys, we have a whole auditorium of chairs over here. We need help. There is no possibility we could get enough volunteers. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. I think we have a few minutes for a Q&A. If anybody has questions. I saw a few people crying. I apologize. That happens sometimes. No questions? I see one.
So awesome.
Thank you, Matt. I'm good.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you advertising the number? Like, I've seen the cards and stuff when I've come to a couple different conventions and things like that, but like, how is it getting out there? Because I even know just from, like, I do the SSA thing at my local college, and we have a couple Christians that come, and whenever we're talking about our personal stories, like the sad parts like that, like they're really affected by it. And I think that like it would be even neat to advertise it to places like Crew and stuff, because I'm sure there are people with doubts there. I just didn't know how you're getting it out.
How we're going to get the word out. Sure. So part of our fundraising campaign that we're going to be putting together is actually creating an ad campaign. And we have a really cool plan in place. We want to put up billboards as close to some of the largest mega churches in the country as possible. Now, I want to be really clear. We are not the Marines of the atheist movement, and we're really nice. So these would not be nasty or inflammatory or anything like that. It would simply be something about this is our number, and if you have questions and you don't have anyone to talk to, we'll help. So the advertising is a big part of it. Currently, right now, we're word of mouth because we want to make sure that we have enough volunteer agents on our hotline to be able to handle the call load. And we want to make sure that we have all the little pieces of the system worked out and we're not having any hiccups. But there is absolutely an advertising campaign coming together, and we're looking forward to getting the word out a little more.
Yeah, I just have a really quick, it's sort of disturbing to my soon-to-be wife and I. We're both therapists.
She waved.
We find it very disturbing that you're having difficulty finding secular therapists, because that's one of the things that we cringe at, because I'm very against the Christian counseling sort of thing. Obviously, I don't disclose my atheist to my clients because it's about them, but most of the clients I work with have some level of belief or are struggling with it and that sort of thing. So I find that, is it that difficult to find?
So it's not that it's difficult, it's that it's risky. There are areas of the country where if you, as a therapist, say, I'm comfortable being a part of this secular therapist project, you could risk losing your entire clientele. And we understand that. So we've got as many safeguards in place as possible, which is you're anonymous when you are a client and you're applying to look for someone in your area. And the therapists actually stay anonymous as they're found by the clientele. Then they're able to communicate anonymously with each other until they decide they're a good fit. And then they can exchange contact information and move to scheduling and that sort of thing. So we've got as many stopgaps in there as we can, but it's still just a lot. And for some people, it's just too much of a risk, and we get that. So that's part of why we try to make sure everybody knows about it. And everywhere we go, we have people saying, I'm a therapist, I want to be a part of this, and we get more. And that's really valuable, obviously. So thank you, I appreciate that.
I don't have a question, but I was just going to thank you, because this is my issue. This is like the most important reason that I'm active in atheism, because I think that people go through these crazy, torturous, nonsensical things in their own brains, and it's invisible to everyone else. And I really appreciate that you're helping people.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you have someone who wants to be a group facilitator in an area of the country where there is no group, how do you find space and get a group started and advertise? And is it the responsibility of the group leader, or how does that all work?
That is such a good question. I actually did not ask him to do that. I've never met you before, have I? But that's like my favorite question. I promise nobody's going to believe me now because I said that, but it's true. Okay, so again, you go to our website and you fill out the volunteer form, and that's for whether you want to be a group facilitator or whether you want to be a hotline agent or both or any of those things. We just completed a fundraiser. Well, we're rolling over the one we just did. We brought in, has anybody heard of Godless and Dixie, the blog? Raise your hand. Wow, he's going to love that. Okay, so we brought on Neil Carter, who is the writer behind Godless and Dixie, and he is now our group development director. And he is taking over all of the groups to help them all get cohesive, and we have a huge backlog of groups right now, getting them in motion. But in order to be a part of that, you just fill out the volunteer thing. You're going to go through the same interview process that everyone else does. And then provided it all comes together, you'll go into a training. Once he gets caught up, I didn't really tell him there was like 200 groups waiting until he signed on. So shush. But we've got him there. He's going to be doing about a 6-month contract with us to be able to get all of that handled and move everybody towards a very cohesive and unified group platform. And then basically what happens is we have a support network on Facebook and on email for all of our facilitators. As far as finding a location, we encourage free open public locations. We are a 501c3, so that means if you're looking for a location in your area, a lot of times libraries will let you use their space for free as long as you're under a 501c3, and we do that paperwork for you. So we do everything we can to make it as easy as possible. It's a 4 to 6 hour a month commitment for being a facilitator, and the meetings run for 2 hours once a month.
How do you cast the net for the people that need the help?
So we're going to be moving all of our facilitators into their own meetup groups because everybody will be able to stay anonymous. For the first couple of years, as I was putting the groups together, this was pre-weird privacy stuff on Facebook, if anybody remembers those days. So when that was going, it was pretty easy to have these groups and they stayed relatively private. So all of our new facilitators got a Facebook group and they were able to interact with people there. And then Facebook obliterated its privacy stuff. And lo and behold, a group for people trying to stay hidden doesn't stay really successful on Facebook. So that means we're moving over to Meetup, and obviously that's an expense that we have to incur, and that's another part of that fundraising I was telling you guys about. So there's a lot of pieces of this coming together, kind of all right now, and as they converge, especially right before the holiday season, this is when we're really about to hit our peak with people coming to us for demand for help. And that's why we need it. So yes, absolutely, I'd love to see you on the rolls. Thanks.
I dare say your opposition may not be quite as compassionate as you are.
Bring it.
And so, other groups who have tried to help people in need have had their doctors killed and their clinics blown up and things like that. And it would seem that you would be a prime candidate for similar treatment. Do you have any worries to that effect? Or has there been any pushback? And then do you have any worries to that effect?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest compliments I ever got was William Lane Craig issued a statement about the Hotline Project at one point, and I was delighted. So then when we launched it, I sent him a copy of the press release just to let him know how that prayer thing worked. So I have a lot of kids. I have a snarky element to me that's just, that's the way it is. But as far as safety and things like that, I mean, we encourage a whole bunch of elements of safety. For our agents, they're all able to stay anonymous. I actually have 3 current practicing ministers, who are a part of our hotline program. They're able to stay completely anonymous. I obviously take some elements of that. We haven't had a whole lot of anything violent or scary necessarily. It's more, they can't wait to see us in hell and all that. But I mean, they're not fond of us, that's for sure.
Sarah Morehead.
Thanks, everybody.